Yeah, today I am really excited. This is a topic that I have been a bit obsessive about, and I've got the lovely Sarah Vachon with me. Sarah, welcome to the podcast. I'd like to just kick off with the fact that you're a sommelier for olive oil. Now, we've all heard of wine sommeliers, and I've never heard of an olive oil sommelier. So tell us a little bit about that and how you got into this.
Yeah, so I mean, just like wine, it is, you're learning about flavors and flavor profiles and pairings, I think is one of the more important things that you learn when you become an olive oil sommelier. But there's a few different programs, mainly in the Mediterranean. Spain has a quite predominant one, which is one that I did. There's one in Italy. And yeah, I actually sought out to do it. I had already started to work in olive oil and had this plan for the business, but I wanted to make sure that I knew what, a lot of people grow up around it, or they're farmers, or they're surrounded by olive oil, and you might think what is good, but actually there's defects just like you see in wine. So one of the main things I wanted to do my sommelier training for was less about the pairing side and more like, can I identify defects in olive oil and know if I taste an olive oil, is this fresh or is this old, or maybe is it a later harvest, an early harvest? So all these decisions I needed to have my own little sensory checkpoint for myself to be able to know that I'm getting the best oils for my community.
So how did it start? How did you get into this?
The business really started because we had these really good family friends in Crete who we were visiting for years. Actually, my husband met this woman on a ferry between Santorini and Crete like 20 years ago, and they became instant friends. And we started traveling together there, and she would come here. The woman's name is Maria. And fast forward, probably 5 years ago, we started talking, or maybe a little bit more than that, about we were always there during the olive harvest, and we would bring back these liters of olive oil to our friends and family in the UK and the US, and we worked in the hospitality and food and drink industry. So we were bringing it back to chefs and bartenders, and they were like, this is amazing. And we're like, yeah, why does it taste different than the oils that we find on the shelves in the UK? And so we went back one year and we said, okay, this year we want to like plant a couple of our trees and have our own olive oil and do this, and we'll bring over oil so we know it comes from our trees. Well, I had no understanding of how olive oil was actually done other than just loosely being involved in the harvest. And I realized that wasn't that possible, but we could bring over some of theirs. And I started to find out how they were paid for this oil and where it went, because they were kind of giving it to some restaurants locally in a big family exchange, but then the rest was sold on to this commodity system, which is the olive oil. Olive oil is a commodity. But they were making it to a really high standard because they cared about organic just as a family, because they were consuming so much of it themselves. They were harvesting, they were like the first one at the mill, which means that they were getting this really green olive, which gives you more antioxidants, more flavor, really interesting, everything that they wanted because they were proud of it and they wanted to have it, again, consume it as a family. But then the rest was going on and being blended really to enmity with all these other different farmers. And when you start playing in this commodity system, then I would get to the mill and I'd see a lot of these farmers just really didn't care at all about their olives, because why would you if you're not consuming it yourself? Your name isn't on the product. There's no connection to you. You're literally dropping off olives or dropping off oil. So I'd see old olives and ones that just didn't look nearly as beautiful as ours. And that got me interested. So at the time, I was also working in sustainability, and I was really looking at that whole supply chain. So the sustainability stuff I was looking at was traceability and transparency throughout the supply chain. And I really started to get excited and interested, not excited, I suppose, saddened, but I saw an opportunity with what we call the first mile, which is farmers that make the thing at the beginning. And how can you reward them and incentivize them, not only for quality, but for land management? So we were fortunate that our friends, again, were very progressive even for their community, and we're looking at biodiversity, and they were living off their land. So they were between the trees, they were growing wild herbs, and they were planting other fruit trees around, and really had this, kind of almost ancestrally how we used to farm. They were doing that, living off their land. And I thought, how can we reward people like this who are doing what we now identify as like regenerative agriculture, bringing in biodiversity, not tilling up the land, removing synthetics, and working in harmony with nature? How can we reward these people? And hence the business kind of took off from there. We brought over our first batch. I said, let me sell this for you because I can make you more money than you would ever make in this commodity system. Your oil is way too good to go into this system. So let me get you more money, and then you can reinvest in your land more. You can buy more trees. We can buy more biodiversity, which was one of the things they did the first year. They brought in other sorts of plants just to make the land richer. And we ran out quite soon. And so I said, well, they're small batch farmers. I'm sure I can find somebody else like this who has these same standards. And then it started. Um, by this point, I had studied a bit about olive oil. So I knew that there was a range of flavors. So I touched down in Portugal, wanted to learn what was going on in Portugal. I did the same in Croatia. I heard of this bonkers region that was making all these award-winning oils, and I'd never even heard of it. And nobody, you can't buy Croatian oil in this country. You know, it's so rare to find. So I thought, and I started going in these different regions and just meeting incredible farmers. And along the way, that happened to be women who were making outstanding oil, and saw an opportunity to, yeah, support them and pay them more and have them reinvest in their land and make nutritious, delicious oils.
Just such an amazing story, and it's so lovely that you are doing this, because the world is really taken over by big industrial brands, isn't it? And getting back to those grassroots is so important, and really supporting that regenerative farming is amazing. Now I'm a nutritionist, obviously, and my listeners are all very interested in their health, and I'm obsessed with the health benefits of extra virgin olive oil in particular. Now, obviously, there's monounsaturated fats, especially the oleic acid, really
Mm,
important, and the polyphenol content is really where the benefits come. Now, in my research, I've found that it is incredibly beneficial for your heart. It can help with blood sugar control. It's anti-inflammatory. It's full of antioxidants, which we know extend our life. It's good for your brain and also for your bones, which was an incredible discovery for me. But um, what I didn't know was about how these benefits are really dependent on the quality of the
mm.
oil. So first of all, tell me a little bit about what's not that beneficial that's out there at the moment and that we might not know about. So what's wrong with olive oil at the moment?
I think the first thing to look at in the category of olive oil is making sure that you're actually getting something that is labeled extra virgin. So, in the case of oils in the EU, they tend to be much more protected. There's a lot more regulation around it. So, if it says extra virgin, and I can get into details of how it might not be anymore, but it should be extra virgin in most cases. So, virgin oils, extra or virgin oils in general, are made without any heat or chemicals. So, this when we think of extra virgin olive oil, we have to think of it, or sorry, when we think of virgin olive oils, we have to think of them as a fresh fruit juice, because they are literally the fruit plucked from the tree, milled in a certain way, that is without heat or chemicals. And what is coming out, that juice is that. There's nothing else done to it. It's just removed from the liquid, and we have this oil. So it is a fresh fruit juice, which means there's a time span of when you should have it, which kind of pertains to what it should smell like, everything like that. Virgin oils are made that way. Regular olive oil has a refinement process, which means heat, chemicals, solvents, things have been done to stretch and get you more oil. So when we use the term actually fresh pressed and cold pressed, those terms are quite redundant. It's more of a marketing term that has taken off, but inside the olive oil space, these are just virgin oils. They are made without heat or chemicals. I think people, especially now, like to say, "Oh, it's cold pressed olive oil," because people are more familiar with cold pressed juice. But the regulation in Europe is without heat or chemicals. So you want to look for virgin oils, and extra virgin really just means that it is that higher standard. Although virgin oils can still be great, but extra virgin is just a higher standard of oil. So that's the first thing you want to look for. To your point, so that's when you're getting the health benefits. Once it's been refined, it's losing, I mean, almost all those antioxidants and polyphenols. It's just sucked out in the processing. The other thing that's important is to know how fresh it is. So all olive oils legally need to have a best before date. So that best before, you usually find it on the bottom or the back of the bottle, and that represents when it was bottled and how long the lifespan is. So it's usually 18 to 24 months is the standard with extra virgin olive oils. And that is to tell you how fresh. So you won't get sick from using old olive oils at all. You know, most of us actually for a long time have probably cooked with very old olive oils. But it just loses all the health benefits. So really, why do that? And the flavor, and it can go a bit rancid. The best before, though, is a bit misleading. I think more brands like us are starting to put the harvest date, because the best before, like I said, is just when it's bottled, which could happen 6 months. It could happen a year later. It is really, there is no, especially in the commodity system where you don't know where it came from and how it moved around and where it's been sitting, what warehouse this has been sitting in. You want to get something based on the harvest date. So that is the date you look for. And I'd say, especially in the health space, you're definitely wanting 12 months, 18 at a max, because we know that polyphenols, all the science shows that they lose between 40 to 50%, that you'll lose 40 to 50% of that polyphenolic content over the course of a year.
Right, right. So something sitting on the shelf in the supermarket, would that necessarily have that harvest date on it? Because I don't think I've noticed that on most kind of in big brands.
Probably not the big players, but a lot of kind of craft brands like us are starting to introduce this. I know a lot of the incredible, particularly women that I know in the industry. That's something, you know, across the world, be it a US brand or somewhere in Europe, are starting to disclose the harvest date because they actually appreciate it just like you would like a wine vintage. It kind of represents something.
Yeah. And also one of the big brands, you talked about those sort of blended olive oils and how they kind of just, you know, they're not as obviously lovingly put together, but they're also probably older and not as good quality. So how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking for to know that you're getting, I suppose, like the real deal in olive oil, well, yeah, you want to have the harvest date, you want it to say extra virgin, but it also that traceability will really kind of prove and set that point. You know, it came from this single estate. Even if they can just give you a region, it's quite helpful. Some of these big blends are pulling from multiple countries. And the danger with that is that that tends to give you an older oil because, as you can imagine, it's pulling from sometimes, you know, 10 different countries. Really, like it's insane, you know, be EU and non-EU origins. They're pulling from so many different places. So these are tanks moving around the Med and being blended ultimately probably in Spain or Italy and shipped over. So that delay is just going to stop the freshness. Whereas if it's like this farmer or this, you know, community mill has produced, it's a bit more of a direct, and you can usually tell that it's fresher. And also, again, to that anonymity point, like I think if you have, you know, thousands of farmers that you're working with, it's just hard to ensure that they're all holding that same quality as if instead of just this one or two, you know, or a handful of farmers. It's better to know that the quality is the level that you want it to be.
And something I've learnt as well is how we store it once we've got it. It's important to have these dark bottles, isn't it? I see a lot of olive oil in very, very pale, almost transparent bottles, and that's
Mm.
not good, is it?
Yes, the enemies of extra virgin olive oil are air, heat, light, and ultimately time. So whenever you are storing this at home, uh, you really want to keep it away from your stove. Well, first, when you pick it up in the shop, it needs to be in a dark container. There are some olive oil brands. There are some very even expensive olive oil brands. I have a story of going to this beautiful chateau in Provence that was a winemaker that also made really outstanding olive oils, apparently. And I went there, and all of the bottles were in clear glass, and we're sitting out in the sunshine in the spring. It's warm, and I was there for an olive oil tasting, and I tried the oils. First, they served me the previous harvest oils, and this was the spring. And I said, "This wasn't the recent harvest. Could I please try the recent one?" And then I said, "Why do you have it in clear? Like, you know, it degrades the oil. Like the light is degrading the oil. Even you can we've done experiments where you set it out for, you know, 10 days on your windowsill and versus one in the cabinet, and you're going to taste the difference." And they said they say, well, we tell people to put it in their pantry. We sell it in a box. And the expectation is that people, but if it's in a clear glass bottle, it's just really hard to protect it. So don't even bother with those. And even the best of brands just say they do it because they know the consumer wants to see the product. But you don't need to see olive oil because color is no indicator of quality in extra virgin olive oil. I don't have one of my little glasses right next to me, but when we judge extra virgin olive oil in panels, we actually judge it in these dark blue glasses. And that is because they don't want you to be able to see the color. Because while color indicates certain things, it doesn't indicate quality. So consumers don't need to see it if an international olive oil judge doesn't need to see the color to know
Right.
the quality. So definitely have it in a dark container. Definitely keep it away from heat until you're ready to cook with it. Air, you know, if you keep it, if it's loose lid or you have a stopper on it that is permanently open, that's going to let in air. And then, of course, time. If you keep it in your pantry for, you know, a year after opening it, so after 3 months of having it open, especially as you're going to the bottle, it's just going to start to lose a lot of those antioxidants. Those polyphenols are released through air and heat. So you want to kind of preserve it as best as possible if you're looking for a healthy olive oil.
And what about cooking with it? Because obviously the temperature, would that damage it at all? Or at what kind of temperatures are we looking at with this lovely oil?
Yeah. So if you are or if you were in this for a health hack and you're wanting to do your spoonful of olive oil in the morning and really get all the perks of polyphenols, or even how you cook with it. So one of our farmer in Crete, Maria's husband, he likes to only put a little bit in the pan, but then he likes to pour as much fresh over it as possible, because heat, the moment you get the heat, it starts to release a lot of those antioxidants. Um, However, I will say that extra virgin olive oil holds up really well to heat. And when people say, oh, you can't cook with it, I think the answer is, well, of course you can, because what has the Mediterranean been doing for thousands of years? They have been using extra virgin olive oil and virgin olive oils, I suppose, as their sole fat that they're cooking, frying. I mean, we're in Crete, which when you think of Crete, it is really the bedrock, the cornerstone of the Mediterranean diet. Like that's where it all happened and spread out across the Med. That incredible diet that's in Crete, if they are frying, they are frying in extra virgin olive oil. I've seen it hold up to heat, but what does happen is you lose a lot of the polyphenols. But the polyphenols, these antioxidants, are what help it from oxidating, what actually help it hold up to heat. So often when you see high polyphenol olive oils, they last better with heat than other oils because they have antioxidants, which are against the oxidation that's happening whenever you're heating it. So of course, there's smoke point and things to factor in, but anything you're doing in your home kitchen, roasting, pan frying, any of these things can be done with extra virgin olive oil. The only time I tell people to be careful and mindful of that is when you start getting with my chefs and people on more of an industrial level and tools that can really create insane heat. But yes, it is perfectly fine to cook with, although you do start to lose some of the health benefits once you heat it. But it's still a much healthier oil if you have to fry than anything else.
Going to use anything, yeah, use that.
Yeah.
And then obviously liberally use it on, drizzling it afterwards.
That's definitely the best way to get the flavor. And yeah.
Boost. Yeah. So I'm very excited because I've got a bottle here from you guys.
Oh yes, all the Spanish. Yes, our lovely from Marina in Andalusia.
This is from Marina, in Malaga. From Malaga?
Yeah.
What I love about this is, so let me just explain to you guys listening what I've got here. I'm holding a bottle here. If you're listening on the podcast, it's very much like a wine bottle, which is really nice to have. I don't know if you did that on purpose, but it's like a bottle of wine that you get. It's glass. It's dark coloured, and this one is from Spain. It says small batch Spain, extra virgin olive oil on the front. And what I love is on the back, it has the polyphenol count. So this one's got 414 milligrams per kilogram. That is a lovely thing to have on the bottle, because it means that, we're getting really good stuff here. So I'm actually going to open it because I haven't tasted it yet.
Here we go.
I've got a glass here, so I'm sorry to you podcast listeners, you can't see this, but I'm just going to pour a little bit in my glass. And I want, Sarah, could you just explain? I know you said color doesn't matter. This one's quite yellow, isn't it? I would love to just take me through what we should be looking for when we're tasting olive oil and we're smelling it, etc. What are we looking for?
So I'd say first thing I do when I do these tastings, pop your hand over the top of that. So if you're at home and you get a nice bottle of extra virgin olive oil, I think you should always try. Like if you're spending, a good, just like you would with a nice bottle of wine, let's have a little smell. So the first thing you do is put it in a wine glass or some sort of like what you have that you can actually kind of get your nose in there and smell. And if you put your hand over the top, that kind of locks in the aromas, the aromatics, the volatile polyphenols that start to release. And then you can have a little swirl, and kind of what you're wanting to do is just kind of shake it up like you would a bit of wine. But sometimes I kind of cup the glass, because the warmth from whenever we do tastings and judging panels, we heat up the oil just slightly, so it starts to release a bit of the aromatics, especially if you're in a cold room, or right now this time of year, you smell a cold oil, you won't be able to smell anything. So if you kind of warm it up with your hand by cupping it, and then you're going to pop your nose in there, kind of swirl it up on the sides, and then pop your nose in and try to get a whiff of the oil. So whenever you first smell extra virgin olive oil, what I always tell people to know that it's extra virgin, and to know that it's not gone rancid or oxidized too much, is to look for the smell of life. Like you want plants, you want freshness, again, olives are fresh fruit. Extra virgin olive oil is a fresh fruit juice. So it should smell like some sort of plant, something that is alive, not just a plain.
It smells super fresh.
There you go.
Like fresh cut grass, a little bit. with sort of slight citrusy flavors. And I'm, you know, I can be talking
Oh,
rubbish.
I love it. Oh my gosh, you're
That's what I'm
spot. You know what?
getting when I smell
You're
that. And it's nothing like anything I've smelled in my cupboard.
Yeah. So that is the fresh cut grass is a great indicator of especially earlier harvest oils, because that means the olives were still green when they were on the trees. That green smell often turns into a smell of like grass, fresh cut grass particularly. And so when you smell an oil and it smells like that, and not all good oils smell like that, but sometimes they have more sweet later harvest like banana or apple notes. But in this case, this is an earlier harvest, so you're going to get that hit of green. Yeah, you're going to get a bit of citrus. Sometimes there's a bit of like tomato plant, you know, notes that come
Yes,
through.
yes.
And there's different ones. Extra virgin olive oils have a range of flavors. So like I said, I have some that are avocado and artichoke. I have some that are almost banana and apple, some that are almond. There's different notes. The next thing that you'd want to do whenever you actually get that home. So if you smell it, you're like, okay, it smells like a plant. This is life. It doesn't just smell like plain fat. Then you can actually take a little sip. And when you take a sip, I'd say you can do the silly little thing, which will sound funny on the podcast, but I'll do it with you, which is to aerate. So you're going to stick it on your tongue, and like you would at a coffee or wine tasting, you're going to do this sound, which is you're kind of you're taking the sip and you're trying to get air around like the sides of your cheeks here and splashing that olive oil across your palate. So it's a with the sip. And then once you swallow it down, what you're going to feel is a bit of a sensation. So if you kind of feel it could be a little bit of an astringency on your palate, and it could be a tickle on the back of your throat, like a little bit of a pepper.
I'm getting that little pepperiness on the back. Yeah, yeah. And
I should tell you, yeah, sometimes when I do really extreme tastings, I always make sure people have good water and things around, because it'll make you cough and choke.
although that's gone down, it's very, very smooth. I must admit, I've never had olive oil from a glass before. Don't, you know, I haven't drunk it straight before, but actually, that is delicious. And it is incredibly smooth, and it's coated my mouth with kind of a silky, lovely flavor. So I'm quite surprised actually, because I didn't think I'd like that, but actually it is really nice. But you must do
Yeah,
this.
yeah. I do a lot of these tastings, and it's really interesting to try several oils side by side to see that, you know, this certain variety from the south of Italy is going to give you a really robust, like bitter astringency on the palate. This one from the north of Spain, this Arbequina variety is going to give you just really light notes. You're not going to get a lot of after. Sometimes the Greek or ones from southern Italy, they hit you in the back of your throat, which is the antioxidants. That's where that is. Actually, I don't know if in your research you've seen the story on how they discovered oleocanthal, one of the more popular polyphenols in olive oil. You'll have to include it in your paper or your book, because it was actually in the early 2000s. There was a doctor from America who was over in, I think it's 2005. He was over in Italy for a medical conference, and they were having a lunch. And as the Italians did, told him to try some of the olive oil on its own, just like you've done. And he tried this olive oil, and he felt this like really peppery, and particularly the Coratina, I believe it was one that was quite a strong, and hit the back of his throat, and it made him cough. And he was like, and it reminded him of a clinical study he had been doing in the US, this trial on taking ibuprofen. So he went back to the US and kind of looked at these olive oils and why it was giving that same sensation. And it turned out that extra virgin olive oils have this compound in it that gives the same reaction and anti-inflammatory that a low-grade ibuprofen would. And this is the discovery of oleocanthal, which actually means something about like throat and oil, this like cough. So oleocanthal, which is now something that is so celebrated in extra virgin olive oil, was actually only discovered, you know, not too long ago, relatively 20 years ago. And this is one of the more powerful polyphenols in it. But the discovery story is incredible, because it was because that sensation in the back of the throat, the doctor knew it had something similar to ibuprofen, and hence the study began.
So random, isn't it?
Yeah, but they do say, I mean, if you have a headache, I wouldn't say take a shot of extra virgin olive oil, but you are getting a, you know, essentially like chemical-free, low-grade anti-inflammatory throughout the day by having this in your meal.
Yeah, amazing. And when you get a bottle like this, this has got a 3 month. You recommend 3 months to consume this
Once
actually.
you open it,
Right,
use it within 3
which
months.
won't be a problem in my house because we use it so much. And then what I love is that you then provide these refills, which are that you can go straight. You keep the bottle, and then you just use the refills to top them up. And this one actually is a different one. This one comes
Yeah.
from Greece, and this is your Crete one, isn't it?
That one is not our original farmers from Crete, but it's an incredible woman. I believe that one on the back, does it say it's from Christina on the little white label?
Actually, it's from Maria.
Oh, this one. Oh, this is the new one. Sorry. Yes. Oh, so you have our fresh harvest
Brand
then.
new. Do you know what? The harvest date on this was
That's
November,
our, yep.
literally November,
Okay.
2 months ago.
You're exactly right. So I didn't remember which one we had sent. Yes, that is incredible because that is fresh oil that we just did the harvest for. Yeah, the first week of November, end of October, first week of November, we were out there and did the harvest with our original family farmers. And yeah, this year, the polyphenol count on that was quite strong, and that a lot of the oils that we're seeing this year, the polyphenols are quite high because the yield was really low. The olives, there were so many droughts. Olives, like grapes, whenever they get really stressed, and whenever they get stressed, they produce a lot more polyphenols. So we didn't get a lot of olive oil this year. We didn't get a lot of fruit. A lot of the fruit didn't make it through all the way to harvest. But what did was real fighters, and the polyphenols that they had
Strongest
pushed
olives
out,
out there.
they're
Yeah.
the strongest olives. And as a
Got,
result,
yeah, you've got 536 per kilo in this one. So
yep,
this is
yep.
like super strong, super fresh. Yeah, and I can't wait to try that one. So yeah,
That one will be, even though the Spanish one is absolutely incredible oil, and we have the new harvest of that actually coming over right now. I believe it's in transit, so it'll be here soon. Because it's a different harvest. It's a fresher. That Greek one, it will smell even more vibrant, and it will be definitely even more peppery because, like I said, those polyphenols fall off throughout the year. But that one's fresh out the gate.
probably wise I didn't try that one first. I
Yeah,
might be
yeah,
coughing through the rest of this
yeah.
interview. So tell me a little bit. What I also love about you guys is you work predominantly with female growers, don't you? Tell me a little bit about why you do that and the benefits of that.
Well, it wasn't intentional at the beginning. Our first farmer, our dear friend in Crete, who we started the business with, just so happened to be her gross, and she was a woman. And then whenever I went to go look for other farmers, what would happen is I would get to these regions, and um, there's not a lot of women in farming in general. There's not a lot of women in the olive oil community, especially. It tends to be extremely male dominated. But when I find a woman, she was often ticking all the boxes that I was looking for. So quality was extremely important, but so was nutrition. Like, they were often doing the test for polyphenols just because they wanted to know versus, and again, that's an additional test. So not all the farmers do that. And they were also really thoughtful on the land management side, on the sustainability side, caring more about organic. But particularly on how they actually produce the oil, there's a couple things that women tend to do, even just down to the fact that we can't carry things the same way that men can in farming. So much of agriculture, this is a separate tangent, but so much of agriculture is a system that's been designed for men, for their bodies, for how things can lift. And when women come into play, the system isn't designed for us. So we often have to cut corners. So things like harvesting in these smaller baskets and then putting this on the truck into these massive bags that these men would throw over their shoulder. Well, turns out those bags and those massive containers that they're using aren't actually a good way to process olives to get them to the mill. So these small baskets are actually beneficial to how you get the olives to mill, and so the olives don't ferment in the heat and sorts of reasons like that, ending up with a better quality oil. So I started to find these women who they were taking the best practice lessons. Yes, they had maybe learned a little bit from their family, but almost as like a lack of confidence that women have, they were over educating themselves in this field. So you would see a brother and a sister, and the brother would have done really nothing, just taken the learnings from his father. And the sister would have like found these courses and networked with other people and tried to understand how to make good olive oil and done a tasting panel. And as a result, I have these women have done hundreds of hours of courses in some cases to be absolute experts in their field. So of course their oil is outstanding. And it's because they just didn't take it for granted that they learned how to do this.
Yeah.
So I thought, you know what? Let me champion these women who are outstanding, who are often alone in their communities. Like, they're going to the community mill and they're the only woman there. When I took my marketing exec this year to harvest, and we went to the mill, and I said, here's the boys club, like, here, man, and we were just going through it. It's all men in this huge mill. And so I think it's a nice thing to give them that community amongst each other. because now we're all in a WhatsApp group. We did a Secret Santa this year where they exchanged oils with each other, and they can learn a lot from each other. But all that aside, they happen to make an outstanding oil.
Yeah, yeah, I just love that whole concept, which is why I sought you out, and I'm so glad that I found you, because championing women who are up against that male-dominated industry is so, so important.
Yeah.
I love this. I love you guys, and I'm sure my listeners and community are going to love you too. You've very generously offered my listeners a 10% discount on on any products that they buy. So you guys, you just need to use the code HappyHormones10 at checkout, and I honestly think you're going to love it. Thank you so much, Sarah. Have we missed anything?
Uh, no, I mean, well, I could talk literally, you'd have to cut me off. I could talk for hours about extra virgin olive oil. But no, I think the main things I always tell people, be it our oil or any oil, like you just did, do a little tasting. If you're going to spend any cash on a nice extra virgin olive oil, especially in the nutrition space, when we're seeing so many people do these spoonfuls of olive oil in the morning, or bulletproof coffee, or adding it to their shakes, like people are really starting to use extra virgin olive oil as a more of a medicinal supplement. And in that case, you need to know that what it is quality. So do the smell check, make sure it smells fresh, make sure it gives you a little pungency, a little pepperiness on the back of your palate. Make sure you know when it was harvested, and that there's some specificity of who's made it and where it's come from. And then kind of experiment around. Like, I started our subscription, which, so we have all oils that you can just buy one off. Our subscription is so you can try different oils throughout the year, just like you would wine. And that's because some people tell me, oh, I don't like olive oil. And it's because they've had one that might be really bitter, or some people really like bitter and they think other oils are too plain. There's a whole range of fruity, sweet, mild, punchy, and you can find the extra virgin olive oil that's right for you, because it really is, it's alone in a category of edible oils as far as how it's produced and the health benefits it brings to the table. So if you are going to have to cook with an oil, you should be using something that is bringing something to the table.
I'm really excited. I'm all set up and waiting for my next batch. I've got to get through this first, but
Yeah,
I'm really excited about this. Thank you so much, Sarah. And
definitely.
it's been
No,
fun.
so excited to chat. I can't wait to read your learnings and everything you dive into the space. I'm really excited from that nutrition side.
Yeah, no, it's really exciting on both fronts. So
Yeah.
so much again, and I hope to see you soon. Take care.